Hey, it's more of this. I probably gotta get through these faster because this is gonna be like 1,000 episodes at the rate I'm going. Revolutionary Girl Utena. This is a show that's fucking mad, fucking insane. There's so much shit in this show, man. It's like the most shit in a show. Like, this is the one that was the first post Ava crazy, like, we're gonna do another thing like that, but like this time really deliberately going at it. Like, we're gonna put as much fucking symbolism in there as possible, as many themes as we can pack in, and just really explore this genre to like the fullest extent imaginable. It's like a shoujo drama that also is like a magical girl fairy tale thing, but then it's all just dark and fucking weird and seedy, and everyone fucks everyone else, and like everything's weird. Um, it's intense. A lot has been written about this show by other anime bloggers, and I'd love to cover it one day. My biggest question is I don't know really how I'm going to feel about this show because I felt weird about it when I watched it. This was a series that I had initially given a 7 out of 10 because it's 39 episodes and there's lots of repetition and like stuff that's just kind of weird and I don't know how to feel about it. Like every episode has the same like minute long build up to a fight and then fight scene, and like the it's kind of structured like a magical girl show in that like the early part of each episode is the interesting part where you're like getting to know characters and like going through the story, and then the later part is mostly about this battle and sort of resolving the conflict. But the battles are so fucking weird because it's got this bizarre music, and just the overall tone and feel of the show is like it's not quite like anything else, and it keeps getting weirder as it goes. Like it keeps getting more and more like the fabric of reality is falling apart around you, as the story gets more in depth. And parts of it are confusing. There were parts I just didn't understand at the time, and I think part of it was that I was literally too young to get it because I watched this in 2007, and yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of mixed feelings about it. But then when I was reading analysis of the show by other people, that was what increased my appreciation for it and made me think, okay, well, clearly there was something going on in all those parts that I didn't recognize. But I still haven't rewatched it. So, and then I saw the movie, which I absolutely loved. And we'll probably get to that later on this list. So, like, I'm sure I will like the show. I just don't know how much. It could be an 8, a 9, or a 10. I really don't know. Like, I have to see it again. So, yeah. And I always recommend it to people, but, like, it's, again, it's like, it's a difficult show to just, like, watch without more context or, like, already having some readings in mind, I think. Like, I don't think the point of it is immediately obvious just from watching it. So, I don't know. I need to watch it again. The second season of Maria Samagami Teru, or maybe the second one, I think. Same things I feel about the first season, probably 7 or 8 ish. Aria the animation. So this was like the biggest Iyashikei show. This is the one that like the most people give the most credit to, and for good reason, because the setting is so fucking beautiful. It takes place in Neo Venetia, which is a version of Venice that's on Mars. The main characters are gondoliers. It's very laid back and chill, but like the characters are really memorable. The world is really nice to look at, and it's very soothing. And as the seasons go on, it develops more of an ongoing narrative. It has some dramatic parts in the later seasons, and the few episodes I've seen of season 2 I was really into. Season 1, it was another one of those weird things where I watched the whole thing because it's Iyashikei and that was really hyped in the community I was in, but it wasn't really my kind of show. Like, I struggled to get through it because I would always be like passing out watching the episodes, but I did really like the characters, so I think I gave it like a 7 before. I'd probably still give it a 7, but I want to watch the rest of it because the parts of season 2 I've seen, there was a few episodes that have really stuck with me. Like episodes 2 and 4 of season 2, I'm a big fan of, and I'd like to watch the rest, but it's also quite long. So the combination of being slow and long across all the seasons is why I haven't gotten around to it again. Kino's Journey. This is a show, when I first watched it, I really liked it. Over time, I've come to think that it's probably somewhat overrated. Like, it's often talked about as though it's like an all-time classic, and it's coming back now, so people are getting excited about it again. But I think it's very hit or miss. Like, it's another episodic adventure series. This one is just this girl and her talking motorcycle, and they can only stay in town for 3 days, and they go to all these different places and like explore. And each place they learn something about human nature from being there. And sometimes there's a really interesting tidbit, something really interesting to say about human nature. Sometimes not so much. It can be really slow and plotting, and not every episode is interesting. So like, and also like while the art design's pretty nice, the artwork is not all that great. So like, I don't know. At the time, I think I gave this like an 8 or a 9. I don't know what I'd give it now. It's been way too long since I've seen it. Maybe it's a lot better than I remember. I remember trying to like rewatch it and not being that into it before though. So I'm not sure. It could be anywhere from a 6 to an 8 as far as I know. Ichigo Mashimaru. This is a really fun comedy series about a bunch of little girls who are adorable, and it's very, very dry. The manga in particular, like the anime and manga feel pretty different because the manga really focuses on like this ultra dry comedy, like almost like there's not a whole ton of dialogue. It's often just like a facial expression is the joke, or just like the weird timing of panels. The anime is not as dry. It's a little bit more standard, but like it still has a lot of those same elements. It's got an interesting rhythm to it. I would say that's the biggest difference between Ichigo Marshmallow and other like comedies about dumb girls. Like you could compare this to something like Yuta Yuri, but that show I feel takes a much more standard approach to the comedy. Ichigo Marshmallow feels a little weird and off kilter in its timing, and I really love the characters. Nobuo Ito was my fucking waifu for a very long time. I'd probably give this an 8 if I watched it again, which I think is what I gave it before. Still stays there. And then Kamichu, which is a similar kind of show. It's another one about 4 girls, and it's a comedy, but this one's way more imaginative. Kamichu is really interesting because it's about a middle school girl who suddenly becomes a god, a Shinto god, of like the god of being a middle schooler. Because in Shintoism, everything has a god. And Kamichu is one that chooses to be totally different in every episode. Like, sometimes it's a slice of life show where nothing really happens. Sometimes it's like much more of a adventure fantasy thing that really explores like what being a god entails. And then there's like one episode that's literally Cat Fight Club. Like, the main character's cat joins a cat fight club, and the whole episode's about that. So it really goes in all kinds of different directions, most of them interesting and entertaining. I'd probably give it an 8 or maybe even a 9 if it's better than I remember. The artwork's really nice too, so yeah, it's a really interesting show. Penny Pony Dash. This is a wacky, over-the-top comedy series that kind of goes beyond the impossible. Like, I would say this show is like if you took Azumanga Daioh and isolated the most absurd moments of it and made the whole show that. Like, it's constantly going way past absurd into like, it's hard to even tell like what's real and what's not sometimes, because the show is just a totally wacky universe. It's one of the early Shaft series when they really started getting weird with their visuals. Main directed by Shin Onuma, and then with Shinbo sort of helping out. It's definitely the craziest Shin Onuma directing that he's done. Like, he always does weird shit in his shows, but this one was like the weirdest, and it's pretty fucking entertaining sometimes. It's not always funny. It's one of those where sometimes it's just a bunch of weird shit happening, but it's not really funny. The characters are not very memorable with the exception of the main one. I don't know. It feels like it's just an attempt to make Azumanga Daioh as fucking weird as possible. But I'd probably give it like a 7 if I saw it today. I'm just betting. Pokemon, the original. And by the original, I mean all the way up through Johto. Because funny thing about the Pokemon anime that me and my brother realized more recently, which we hadn't really gathered, because I kind of missed a lot of Johto while it was airing. Like, I didn't end up seeing the majority of it. I kind of lost interest during the Orange Islands, as I think most people my age did, because by then the show had been airing for years, and they were changing up the characters, and it just got weird. And then I saw parts of, like, Pokemon Advanced Generation and all those other ones, but the funny thing about it is everything up through Johto is one show, and I actually think that Ash has a complete narrative arc across the original Pokemon. Like, if you want to see the sort of, like, ending of Pokemon, like what he becomes, I think this series kind of did it. Like his rivalry with Gary gets completely fleshed out. Gary has a full arc. His relationship with his Charizard, that's like a big deal throughout the show. Like all those things kind of wrap up by the end of the original Pokemon, but it's hard to tell because who the fuck has actually seen all 276 episodes of it? Nonetheless, I mean, Pokemon was my favorite thing as a kid. It was my favorite show, my favorite franchise. I was way obsessed with it. I can still easily watch the early episodes and have a good time. Actually, the way I've been pseudo rewatching the show is through Adam and Merc, which is a show that Your Movie Sucks has, where him and his friend have been watching each episode, and then his friend edits it, like their commentary, into like a 6-minute funny video. And that's a really entertaining way to watch the show. It comes out extremely infrequently, but yeah, I mean, Pokemon, I will always have a soft spot for. I love the current season of the show. I loved the Black and White series. So, like, I'm going to say I'd probably give it like an 8. Just, I mean, you call it pure nostalgia, but, like, I still fucking get down with some Pokemon. Digimon Adventure, meanwhile, I don't remember any of. I watched this, like, while it was airing on WB. I watched the reruns in, like, 2000 or 2001 or something, and, like, I got into it briefly. Like, there was a time where I kind of thought, oh, Digimon's really cool, but then it just didn't have the same impact on me that Pokemon did. So I just didn't continue, like, caring about it. So I really don't remember almost anything about Digimon Adventure. I couldn't possibly score it. I always hear it's fantastic. Like, I know people who are big into Digimon, so I'm sure it's good, but, you know. Infinite Revius. This is a great show I've recommended recently. It's a really hardcore drama in space about a bunch of kids who get abandoned on a space station, and they have to sort of form a society there, and the process of forming a society leads to all kinds of dark and fucked up stuff to happen. It's got a great hip-hop soundtrack that I think sounds nothing like anything in anime that I've ever heard. It's really interesting. Pretty good artwork in spite of the fact that all the characters have same face because of the character designer. That's just his style. He's the same guy who did Gundam Seed. And, yeah, like, it's just good. It's a good drama, and it resolves well. Like, it has a complete story. It's one of the few 26-episode shows from the early 2000s that actually just tells a complete story and never falls apart in the process of doing so. I'd probably give it like a 8 or a 9 if I watched it today. Legend of Duo! Legend of Duo! You guys might not know this, but on this channel, if you go back far enough, I did a dub of this show. I only did the first 2 episodes. I've never got around to the rest. But Legend of Duo is one of the worst anime ever made, to a hilarious degree. It's like awesomely bad, because each episode is 5 minutes. It was literally made for cell phones. It's a BL story about vampires that is just completely inane and stupid. It's like, it tries to be really edgy, but it feels like it was written by a teenager. Like, it feels literally like something that a teenager wrote, and like in an attempt to write like a cool edgy story about gay vampires. But it's really bad. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The story jumps all over the place. The animation is barely existent, and when it is there, really bad. It repeats a lot of the same animations. It has like one song in the whole show that plays over and over again. But the funniest thing about it is that the main character is voiced by Tomokazu Sugita, who's the voice of Gintoki from Gintama and Kyon from Haruhi. He's like one of the best voice actors ever, and he's just in this cell phone show. It's so bad, but it's really fun. I would recommend giving it a try, because it's only a couple hours, like maybe 2 hours to watch the whole show. So, like, yeah, it's worth it for the memes. And I was trying to do a, like, really bad Garzy's Wing-esque fan dub of it, but I don't think anybody got the joke. Nobody cared. Koikaze, this is the ultimate incest anime. It's an incest show that actually takes itself seriously and is like a dramatic story. It's about an older guy. He's in like his 20s, and he falls in love with a younger girl who it turns out is his sister that he hadn't seen since she was a baby. And it explores their relationship, man. It's really slow, kind of like washed out artwork aesthetic. I would say it's not the most entertaining show. Like, Again, it's pretty slow. The characters aren't that likable. It's not super memorable, except for the fact that it goes all the way on an incest plot, and it's kind of worth watching for that. I mean, it's well done. It's well directed and written, just not like that entertaining. So I'd probably give it like a 6. I think it's worth having seen, but I've never felt a strong drive to revisit it. Kashimashi Girl Meets Girl. This is another of my 2007 binge shows that I watched because it's Yuri. But, like, it's about a guy who gets hit by an alien spaceship and it turns him into a girl. And there's 2 girls who end up falling in love with him as a result of him being a girl. One because she's a lesbian, the other because she literally has a disease where she cannot see men, which is fucking weird. It makes no fucking sense. It's kind of just like a fan service comedy. It's very juvenile, and the plot is stupid. Like, it gets really hammy and emotional, even though, like, it's emotional about a girl literally having a disease where she can't see men. So, like, it's really dumb. I don't even remember how it resolves. I'd probably give it, like, a 4 or a 5. Like, it's not offensive, but it's no good. Utakata I really hated at the time. This is like one of the early Dark Magical Girl shows. It aired at the same time as Nanoha, but it was definitely more adult. Like, it's a little bit more fan servicey, and like the stuff that happens is even darker than in Nanoha. But like, it's slow and boring, and the characters suck, and the way the plot goes is really dumb. And like, it just feels perhaps smaller than it needed to be, and like, I don't know. I remember the story being really stupid. Like, I hated this show. I'd probably give it like a 2 if I had to watch it again, because I didn't like anything about it. Rec. This is a really charming, really adult romantic comedy show where the characters hook up in the first episode, and then it's just kind of exploring their relationship as each of them goes about their everyday life. The main character is a salaryman, and the girl he's dating is a voice actress, and she's kind of trying to get her career off the ground. So a lot of it's about exploring them sort of working together. I think because he works for like an advertising agency, and she ends up doing the voice in like a commercial for his agency or something like that. They work together in some capacity. They have some hardships. They have some love ships. It's a good time. It's not like super memorable. It does have an amazing OP. It's pretty short. Like, it's 9 episodes and they're like half length. So you can watch it in like 2 hours. But yeah, it's fun. I think I'd probably like it even more than I did as a kid now that I am an adult. So I'd probably give it like a 7 or 8. Going on my memory of it. Puguru! This is something you should all check out because it's 3-minute episodes. This is like way before 3-minute episodes were common. This is one of the earliest 3 minutes of just fucking weird comedy shows about just these dopey, ugly characters doing weird shit. I mostly remember just like a couple of gutbuster episodes, and then the rest is like kind of whatever. Like, it's very mixed bag, but you know, you can watch it in like an hour, so it's worth a shot. I'd probably give it like a 6, which is usually what I give these, because like it's in the same vein as like Take-Q, where sometimes it's really funny, sometimes it's just you don't even get anything out of it, but like the fact of its existence makes it entertaining in its own way. Shinigami no Ballad, this is a 6-episode OVA that I really wanted to love because I fucking love the main character's design, and the OP of the show is really good. I love the aesthetic. She's the god of death. She's just a Grim Reaper girl, and she's just kind of sad because she can't really be friends with anyone because she's a Grim Reaper. But each episode is just an episodic story about like some character who dies in the course of the story, and it's just kind of like what their story is, and they're pretty generic. Like, I didn't get anything out of the individual episode stories. I wanted it to be a show about Momo, the god of death, but it's not really about her, so it's pretty boring. I'd probably give it like a 4 or a 5. Like, again, there's nothing like wrong with it. It's not memorable. Rescue Wings. This is an odd one. This is a show that not many people know about, but it's like the most adult Iyashikei show of them all. Like, it's about a guy who becomes he becomes part of a rescue team, like on a helicopter, and like it's extremely realistic. It just is like a day in the life of this guy who joins a rescue team, and you know, it's got its like kind of poignant moments. Most of it's pretty slow and realistic, and like I remember thinking it was like good but boring when I was a kid. Like I think I probably gave it like a 6. I'd probably still give it like a 6. I don't know. I don't know if there was more depth to it than I realized at the time, but like I know some people who really appreciate this show just for being like, you know, a grown-up show that's just like about life. About life as just being a person, you know. Then we get Nia Under 7. This one's a real mixed bag of good and bad ideas, and it's kind of all over the place in a similar way to Futakoi Alternative, because it's about this girl who's just like a college student who's really fucking poor, and she lives in a shithole apartment, and she's broke, and there's this alien girl named Nia, because like aliens have basically invaded Tokyo, but they're just kind of there, like they're just a part of life. This is another like Iyashikei sort of show, but like she is like the lowest rung of alien society. So everyone's basically racist against her, and like aliens really hate her. But she's also like an obnoxious brat. So she's like a totally unlikable character, even though you do kind of feel for her in the fact that she deals with these, you know, these problems of sort of classism against her, if not racism. But like the first episode of the show is like a wacky spastic comedy, but then after that it's mostly an Iyashikei, and like every once in a while there's an episode that's a little bit funnier or more wacky, but like as it goes on it mostly gets really somber and kind of depressing, and it's just about this girl being fucking poor and nothing in her life going right, and it just kind of hurts. And then it wraps up like with another kind of wacky comedy episode. It's really odd. The production values are garbage. So like I think it's an interesting show. I think it's worth checking out, but like not necessarily great. I'd give it like a 6 probably. Arjuna. This was briefly my favorite anime of all time. This is a really out there new age show that's like it's almost like a lecture that also happens to be a good show. Basically, the main character is this girl who gets into an accident, and she is like reborn as like an Indian like Vishnu god or something like that, or Arjuna, I guess. And like she it's kind of treated like a magical girl power, where like in each episode she'll transform and fight a monster, but like most of the show is episodically about like different themes of how humanity is destroying the planet, and like getting back to nature and stuff like that, and like recognizing all the problems in our society, some of which are like there's one episode that's all about how fucked up our education system is. That one I definitely feel very strongly about. But then there's one episode that seems to have like a vaguely anti-abortion message, which is, it's a really interesting episode, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm just like, oh, that's fucking weird. There's like, it goes in a lot of different directions in like what messages it's trying to send. It has a big epic finale, and like visually it's all over the place, because it's a satellite show, which they tend to do like shows that have sometimes look unbelievably beautiful and sometimes look like shit, and they have lots of weird CG integration. So like the show is kind of a giant clusterfuck, but it's a really interesting clusterfuck. And you know, it was my favorite show for a little bit because I was like 17 and like I felt red pilled, I guess, after watching it. But in spite of the fact that the philosophies are what you would call blue pill, but whatever. You know, it's good. I'd highly recommend it. I'd probably give it an 8. It has a phenomenal soundtrack from Yoko Kanno, one of my favorites from her. Probably my second favorite after the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack. Dragon Ball Z! I've seen most episodes of DBZ, and not really in order, and like, my relationship with DBZ is I was never really a fan of it, but it was always on, and a lot of my friends were big fans. So I kind of like pieced together what the narrative of the show was secondhand, and would see random episodes. I always thought it was like, okay, you know, I could enjoy it, but I mean, it just isn't really my aesthetic or style, and it always felt like nothing was happening in the episodes. So I don't know I don't know if I could watch all of DBZ, first of all. Like, I'd much rather read it if I had to consume it. I think Dragon Ball the original is much more interesting, and I'd much more rather, you know, consume all of that. But DBZ, I'd probably give it like a 5, you know? I don't think it's offensive. I think that it's way too slow. and it definitely like goes on way longer than it needs to, and kind of flanderizes some of its characters and like the style of the narrative. But like, I don't think it is necessarily bad. It's just kind of too much. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. I've talked about this quite a bit in the old ass anime cast. It was one of my favorites for a while. I think there's elements of it that feel dated now, and elements of it that hold up incredibly well, based on like what I've seen here and there of like rewatching episodes for different videos. But I still haven't had a full rewatch of the show to fully appreciate it. I'm probably gonna give it an 8 or a 9. I think it probably holds up even better than I would first assume, because like there is a great dramatic narrative underlying all of it. And I think the reordered episodes are genius. Still have never seen season 2. I have seen the movie, which was good. I'm way overdue for a rewatch of it. Uran High School Host Club. I was pretty into this show. Like, I really like the characters. Uran's a show that I think, unfortunately, it's not always that funny. It can be pretty repetitive. Some of the episodes aren't that memorable, and the anime has no conclusion. It kind of goes to, like, it doesn't finish the manga. It just kind of goes to a point and stops, and, like, there's so much, like, I think the will they, won't they goes on too long, and, like, the main relationships and stuff in the show. But the aesthetic's really nice. I like the directing style. The characters are really cool. So, like, overall, I'd probably give it, like, a 7. It's on the same tier as stuff like Snow White with red hair, where, like, there's elements of it that I really love, but it's just not engaging enough of a show for me to, like, consider it a favorite or anything like that, in spite of the fact that it has things about it that I do really like. But I don't know. And I also don't know how well it holds up. It's been a long time since I saw it. Utawereru Mono! This was a fun show about, like, the main character's really cool. It's another one where everyone's really good-natured, but, like, unlike something like Snow White with red hair, which is another everyone's good-natured show, but, like, in that show there's big conflicts that happen, but they never really get, like, violent or, like, go into, like, serious dramatic territory. Utawereru Mono does that, where, like, this is actually a war story, and it's, like, about this small village kind of rising up and overthrowing these higher-up governments that are, like, shit. And it's really interesting in that regard. Now, it has problems, such as the pacing's not that great, the dialogue's not that great, and the animation is pretty bad. So, like, it's a little slower than I'd like it to be, and I think what really carries it is just liking the characters so much, and liking the sort of tactical approach that it takes, and just the unique storyline that, like, I've never really seen a story quite like this in another show. So I'd probably give it, like, a 6, which is what I gave it back then. It's interesting, but it's, doesn't fulfill its potential to the greatest extent that it could. Nana. This is a brutal drama show. It's a very long, very popular shoujo manga adaptation from Madhouse. Once again, Mori Osaka directing, the same guy as Card Captor Sakura, and, it's really fucking solid, but it also just becomes crushingly hard to watch. Because the main thrust of the show is it's about 2 different girls who are both named Nana, and one's like a girly girl who is like always having boy trouble, and the other one is a punk rock chick who is in a band. And her, like, the main thrust of the show, like the main narrative, is about punk rock Nana, her band, like, taking off, like, them gradually becoming popular and, like, rising up from being just, like, a bunch of fucking kids from broken homes, gathering together and becoming something meaningful. And, the other Nana is, like, sort of the band's biggest fan, and it's also about her relationship dramas on the side. It's kind of, like, there's no one central point. It's just following these characters throughout their lives and, like, what happens to them. But, like, there's a point about halfway through where it gets really depressing because the things happening in their lives are sad, and it never recovers from that. The whole rest of the show is just depressing. And it has a really fucking terrible ending because the manga was still going. So the anime for the last episode does a, like, 1 year later, like, what's going on 1 year later, but it still doesn't resolve anything, and if anything, it leaves a lot of open questions, and it is even more depressing of an ending. So, like, the show is too hard to watch. That's why I've never rewatched it. Like, I think it's really good. I had given it, like, an 8 out of 10, and I'd probably still give it an 8 out of 10, if not even a 9, but I can't put myself through the emotional ringer of this show again, you know? I don't get off on watching shows that depress me. Some people seem to. And the last one we'll talk about in this video is Simone, which I covered a lot of in my Yuri cast. It is a really interesting fantasy war story about all these young girls who are coming of age while also fighting in a war, and just like their interpersonal drama, the stuff that's going wrong with that, like, you know, them trying to grow up in this scenario that's kind of allowing them to stay in a suspended childhood, this really dramatic thing that's going on around them. Like, it is a war story, you know, characters die, there's some fucked up parts to it. It's really interesting. The production is weird because the artwork is beautiful, but it's got this like CG fusion that doesn't work very well. You know, there's elements of the show that I could understand why people really wouldn't like, but I think it's really fucking solid. I would definitely give it an 8 or a 9 if I watched it again today, because I think that the dramatic narrative is just really good and works really well. And I guess that's it for this episode of the fucking rating everything. I think I made it through 20 shows this time, so it's better than last couple. Maybe we'll do this in less than 50 episodes. Who knows?